Have you ever left a conversation with someone that you love feeling disrespected, maybe even worthless? Well, in my conversation with Erica Elita on her show What Matters, we talked about how to keep it clean with some conflict hygiene. Coach Drew. Hey everybody, Coach Drew here. If you haven't subscribed, now's the time because we're really talking about some stuff that's going to help you and your relationships. Most of us don't like conflict, and most of us haven't been taught how to do conflict well so that we leave conflict feeling better than we went in. That's what this show is about. Me and my friend Erica, we get into the do's and don'ts of conflict. Check it out.
Well, welcome back to this episode of What Matters. I'm here today with Coach Drew, and I am Erica Elita. And today we are talking about keeping it clean, good conflict resolution, how not to be hurtful and difficult, and to actually get your point across. Have you ever noticed that when people are disagreeing, they get mean?
Mm-hmm.
Nice people get really mean.
Yeah.
And things go from 0 to 100. And now people are calling names and slinging insults and insinuating what people do with their spare time and where they can put comments. And why do people do that? Why do people get mean when they disagree, Andrew?
There could be a number of reasons, but let's just paint a picture.
Okay.
Let's go back to how people are raised generally.
Mm-hmm.
We are raised in environments, for the most part, where you get in trouble when you do something wrong.
Yes.
You are often made to feel silly, stupid, condescended to when you've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward that 40 years. That's what you have. When we disagree, I can't afford to be wrong because I'm going to feel stupid. I'm going to be less than you. So what I do is I seek to win. And when I seek to win, I try to dominate. And I try to control the situation. And I make you look and feel small, so I don't.
Wow. That has explained so many interactions that I've had where I say something, they disagree, and then all of a sudden,
right.
You're like, wow, you called me 6 names, you mentioned my mom, you threw in my kids. It just goes from 0. But that's their way of dominating and staying on top. But then the point is always lost. You are now never...
Of course.
Talking about what the original topic was.
Right. And I think the worst thing about it is we reinforce that culture and that dynamic where two people can't agree and still be loving and convey value for the other person. And that's what's missing. In relationships, we get into this thing and we're on the same team. We want the same things. But all of a sudden, we have a disagreement. And now we're on opposing teams.
Oh, yeah. Now we're not. I don't even know if we're still married no more. Like, it might be a wrap.
Instantly.
Instantly. As soon as. And that is something, I mean, you're absolutely right that happens very much in everyday life. I think that's very interesting what you said about people get mean because of how we're meant to feel when we're small about being wrong, right? And that makes me even reflect on some parenting techniques and ones that were applied to me and I apply myself. But what feelings do you associate with being wrong?
That's a good question.
Right?
For me, I remember this one instance when I was in university. Okay, I was in seminary, and there was a question that was asked, and I was hesitant to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked around and I saw different people engaging. Hands up, bold and strong. I'm like, why don't I do that? Why am I not that way? Then I realized, wait a sec. I don't want to say something that's wrong. If you think about it, we go to school to learn, which presupposes that you don't know everything.
Exactly. So why are you
am I afraid to acknowledge that I don't know something?
This is why I'm in your class.
In a place of learning.
Exactly.
And I was like, no, then I realized, okay, that's where this is coming from. This is all of my stuff. And then I started to engage. Okay, well, it's okay to be wrong. I'll put up my hand. I have something of value. It might not be wrong. It might just be different. And there's something worthwhile. And that idea is changing my life. So I think one of the rules of engagement before we have an argument is we decide how we're going to be with each other. We commit to respecting and valuing each other when we have differences of opinion.
Right.
Like you can anticipate if you don't anticipate conflict, you're setting yourself up. It is a setup. You will have conflict at some point. So you might as well be intentional about saying when we have conflict, this is what we're gonna do. Right? I mean, that saying is so true. You if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yes. So I do think that conflict is a natural part of
Yes.
all relationships. Now, how do we deal with it properly? I think, first of all, there's some basic rules of engagement, right?
Well, there ought to be.
There ought to be. Okay.
I believe there ought to be. And for some people, like one of the callers, is it Dina? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Yes, it is Dina.
Dina. She talked about her and her husband having rules basically of engagement. Not everybody has that. They're communication specialists. I think professionally that's what they do. But imagine if we all had rules of engagement.
Would those be considered boundaries?
Yes.
There we go. That's
Yes,
another great
exactly.
thing to have.
They
is
really would.
boundaries.
And they could also dovetail nicely with expectations. But the difference is when we talk about them and make them explicit, then we're in a whole different realm of relating to each other, because most of the times we have boundaries, but we don't talk about them.
Yes, we don't
make
share them. No
clear.
one knows what they are.
Right.
So it's a bit of a guessing game.
Yes.
And people cross them, and then they get this reaction from the other
Yes.
person wondering what's gone wrong. And so being clear about your boundaries. I mean, as you watch this show, and we did a show on expectations as well. Boundaries is a whole other topic as well. But as you go through the show, if you have any new relationships to develop from here out, starting out with some boundaries is, I think, a really great way to avoid a lot of conflict.
Right.
You know?
And the way to start to identify them is if there's a should in the statement. Okay, that will highlight what the expectation is.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's talk about you. Let's say we're coming up with rules of engagement.
Okay.
I should always, or I should never.
Aren't we supposed to not use never and always?
But this will highlight what our expectations are.
Right. Those are setting really clear
Exactly.
boundaries.
And when we start to do that, then we'll realize, okay, this is what's valuable to me. For example, one rule that I think is healthy to be generalized is I should never disrespect you.
Yes. That's a good never.
Right? I should never disrespect you. So my expectation is that you're not disrespectful to me, and I'm not disrespectful to you.
Right.
But then we move forward to define what is disrespect.
Right, exactly. So different. So that could be a very clear rule from the beginning, but we now have totally different ideas of disrespect, right? Some people, one of the things we're going to be bringing up in fighting fair and having, good exchanges, is not name calling.
Exactly.
That's a really big one. However, different people take it differently, right?
Yes.
Some people, you'll hear certain conversations between two other people and your eyes open up really wide and you're like, wow, this is going bad.
I hear it all the time.
This is how they interact.
All the time.
This is how they speak to one another. And it's, for the outside person, you're horrified, but that's how they speak to one another.
Yes.
Other people, even if you say their name in a wrong tone, that's it. It's
Right.
it's
Right.
a
Because
wrap.
some of us are more sensitive than others.
Right.
But you know what I find? I find it starts in jest when people are joking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're joking but not joking.
What's that saying? There's a grain of truth in every joke.
And every lie, and yeah,
Something like
there's
that.
always these grains. And one of the grains that I find when people, one of the statements would be, "Man up," or "Grow up," or "You're so sensitive," or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't jokes.
No, they're not.
No, there's something there that they want to say, and they're
Mhm.
saying it without being clear.
Yes.
And believe it or not, they're lighting a fire with those statements.
Isn't that being passive aggressive?
Sometimes, because sometimes, put it this way: if it's my culture and it's my belief,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily doing it to bother you. That's just what I believe.
Mhm.
But sometimes I might be doing it to bother you without trying to be direct. So if I believe that men shouldn't be sensitive and they shouldn't be bothered by certain things, then when you seem bothered by something that I don't think is that big of a deal, then I'm going to minimize whatever it is you're experiencing, whatever you're thinking, and I'm going to put a label on it and be like, it's not a big deal.
You're being childish. You're being sensitive.
I mean, when we talk about hygiene, conflict hygiene, I think it's important to look beyond just this conversation. What is the tone we want for our relationship? What is the tone we want for our family? What is the tone we want for our community? What is the tone we want for the world? It is.
Yeah.
It's that
It
significant.
really, yeah, it really, really does. You are the building block. The individual is the smallest part of society. The family, to me, is the first stone, and then that's how we build out. And how you speak to yourself, then will be how you speak to your spouse, will be how you speak to your children. And then there's a culture. How you have company cultures, well, you have home cultures, and so forth. So that really, like you said, it changes the world. Wow, Andrew, that's really profound. That
proverb: do unto others
as you wish them,
as you would have them do unto you. But the reality is sometimes that isn't even helpful, because if our sense of self-worth is so impoverished that we don't value ourselves, then we will expect poor treatment and we will give poor treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you stayed to the end of this video. I really want to know what you got out of it, because I'm still getting stuff out of it. If you want to see the full video, it's on my TCN. I've left the details below. But we really get into what it means to convey value, even in the midst of conflict. I really believe if we did that for each other, our world would be a better place. And that's what I'm pushing for. That's my mission. If you want to join me, please join in for the ride. Leave me some comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and share it with someone, because I know you know somebody who could use this video. Until next time, continue to learn, heal, and grow.